Hey guys, welcome back to Redemption Podcast. And I want to remind you guys, this is a space where men come together to confront the challenges, the real challenges that we're dealing with, but also to grow in our discipline and become the men that God intended us to be. And I want to say this because one of the reasons why I created this podcast is because I realize fitness is important. And, we'll have those conversations about, diets and exercise and all of that stuff if it's important to you. But most importantly, I knew that it wasn't enough. And I knew that when we start talking about building muscle, it doesn't talk about building character, right? When we start thinking about the fact that getting shredded doesn't heal the insecurities we have. And I can tell you this over and over again. I speak to men on a daily basis. I've coached so many men, and it's interesting to see what's happening to us and where we're standing and why things become harder for us. And so when I really think about redemption and I think about this podcast, my goal is to provoke you to get change, right? To help support that place, but be a place you can come to. And these things, these messages really help build your momentum and give you the focus and mindset you need to be moving on. So with that being said, I want to keep it real with you guys because, I've been in a place, that I thought if I grind hard enough, if I drove the expensive car, if I build the muscle, people would just respect me. It would you would just see me walking in and, I got the nice whip, I got the Mercedes, I got the BMW, I look good. But the reality is that all the discipline in the gym means nothing if you don't have the discipline in your heart and your mind and your spirit. And, that's something I think that over time for me has become a big portion of me really just maturing as a man, me becoming stronger as a man in the role that God is pointing me to in my family and in my purpose. And so one of the reasons why I continue to have these conversations and feel really motivated about this podcast is because when we start thinking about these things, I want to put something in front of you today. And I really want to make sure that the clip that I'm going to share with you guys today is something that you see my intention, right? So the clip we got today, this comes from Jason Wilson. If you guys have never met, this guy's great. He was on the Cam Newton Funky Friday podcast. And Jason's a person, he's a mentor of men. He trains men for years. And he's one of those voices that doesn't just talk about masculinity, he lives it. And he calls it out in a way that convicts you. And when I heard this, I thought to myself, man, this is something I thought I should bring to this podcast. So in his clip, he talks about marriage, he talks about fear, inadequacies, and manhood. So, and if you listen close, you'll hear he doesn't just talk about marriage. He's talking about life. So let's see what he's talking about. Let me get this clip here. This is something new I'm doing, so hang with me. Let's make sure this works. This is pretty cool. Watch this. So, boom. All right. So this is the clip. Jason, I'm not going to say anything. This is a short clip, but I really wanted to use this. This was going to be the basis of our discussion today, what we're going to talk about on this podcast. So let's play it.
I talk to a lot of men about being married. They can love the woman, desire to be with her. They always say, well, Mr. Wilson, I need to get a little more money. Mr. Wilson, I need to get this house. Maybe when I get this business going, I'll go ahead and lock that in. Mm-hmm. I said, me and my wife, we got it together. Mm. I didn't have money, a lot of money. My wife was a nurse. We put that together. That's why the scriptures say it's not good for man to be alone. Right. The woman in Hebrew, the word helper is Azah, which also means a shield, succor, support. Mm. So many of us, when you look at what's happening in our community, we're missing that, especially when studies come out to show that over 80% of millionaires are married. What are we missing? Majority of us is fear. And then the inadequacy piece, the imposter syndrome. Now, when I get married, I can't be a stoic. Oh, she's going to find out that I'm depressed sometime. She's going to find out that, man, I still struggle with confidence. I'm really not the leader she thinks I am for her to be around me all day long. Mm. That's why I say, man, it's not the lack of discipline. It's not even self-control. Those are fruits of the seeds that have been planted. So if you don't have the right seeds and the right soil, your manifestation of the bad fruit is what we're seeing now in so many men.
Wow. So that's powerful. And I hope you guys understand, at least from his number one, is I'm going way deeper on this podcast than, probably what you expected. But, I think it's important because I will say this, Jason said too many men wait till they get it all together before they commit. And I don't know if I've heard this probably, I don't know how many times I've heard this, but I've heard it over and over and over again. Younger men, even, men in my age, sometimes they're in the place they are because they've been waiting to commit. And so, one of the things they say is that, once you've got all the money or once I've got all the money or once I got the house or once the business is running smoothly. But here's the problem. I think the biggest thing is that you'll never feel like you've arrived. And it's always going to be something that's missing. There's always going to be a situation where you are not fully where you want to be at. And so I think the thing that's really powerful about his message today is that you're building it together. And, when you're sitting here as a man and you're married or you're looking for that spouse, a lot of times you're trying to build all these things on your own and get to a place where you have all these things because you believe that these things are going to make this woman respect you, or you're going to be able to be this provider, but you're doing all these things on your own. And I think he's made some really good points here is that he said when he was married, he didn't have it all. And, to be honest with you, like I kind of resonate with that because again, I've been married, almost said 16 years, going on 13 years. I've been together 16. And the reality is I start thinking about it. It's like, what he says is that he didn't have it all, but they had each other and then they built it together. And what's important or what I think is significant about that is, we as men, we struggle a lot of times because we will cut the woman out. First of all, she won't be in our life, or if she's in our life, we do all these things in isolation, which means we're also struggling in isolation. That means we're also having these challenges in isolation. We're also having these insecurities in isolation because we're too fearful of actually connecting and making sure that, we are sharing those insecurities, those scars, those worries with the women that we want to be with. And so when I think about this reminds me of a scripture. It's Genesis chapter 2, verse 18, where God says, it's not good for man to be alone. I will make him a helper suitable for him. And, God's intention, really is bigger. It's aligned with what Jason's saying. So Jason mentioned that in Hebrew, there's a word called ezar, which I like the way that sounds. But it was interesting because as he talked about this, he says it means helper, which also means shield, support, strength. And that hit me because I'm thinking to myself, the world normally tells us that as men, we need to be the ones that are the protectors, right? And it's not saying that the woman is protecting you. It's saying that the partnership, the design that God has is where the shield and protection is, the alignment. And so sometimes we're missing in these situations where we're so focused on trying to build and do all these things on our own that we end up in a situation where we are losing the power and the protection by having the marriage and the wife and that type of alignment with God, because that's how he designed it. I mean, it says in the word that it says, it's not good for a man to be alone. I will make him a helper suitable for him. It's not about you just having a companion. It's about having a helper. Like the key thing here is he says to not be alone, not to go out here and grind and do things just by yourself. He specifically said, I will make him a helper. I will make a helper suitable for him is what he said. I need you to think about that because, even when we start talking about programs that I have, a lot of times I'm talking to men, I'm like, is your wife supporting you? What part is she going to play? She's cooking your food. Like you need to do it together. Yeah, you might have came to me because you're saying, hey, Z, I resonate with you, man. Let's rock. I need your help. I need your support. But the reality is if you're doing it on your own and you're not doing it with your wife, what kind of success do you expect to have? And then the fact is that you're doing something good for you, which I commend you on, but you're leaving your wife out of it. You're not even thinking about that, right? You think about what that looks like. Think about the strength and the power that comes from having that partnership, working on those goals together. This is where, when we really think about it, is like God never intended us to do things on solo. It's never that way. I mean, it's in his word. He said it. And the reality is that when we start really thinking about these things, this is where these fear, inadequacies, and imposter syndrome come from. You're acting on your own, hiding that you may not know, hiding that you may be insecure or you're not confident because you don't want your woman to think less of you. And I get it. Like, I don't get me wrong. Like, you'll be silent and quiet about it. And you're like, well, men don't normally share their feelings. I'm not talking about your feelings. I'm talking about what you really think, what's really challenging, what's holding you back. Because guess what? Again, I've helped so many men lose weight, 40 plus pounds in 16 weeks, 24 weeks, whatever the time is taken. And I've seen them look great. I've gotten them off medication. I'm like, man, you've changed your life. But the reality is that, especially a man who's married, the reality is that you're doing these things and you have to realize that this is a life-changing. This transformation means change, real change, not just look good for a moment and then revert back to your own way. It's about outlasting the old version of yourself that brought you to the point where you needed to make this transformation, where you needed to redeem yourself, right? And so we started talking about like what this means. Jason went a little deeper when he talked about fear, inadequacies, and imposter syndrome. I mean, I'm going to say this. How many of us have been there where you've actually felt like, maybe comparing yourself to other people, maybe even looking at yourself thinking you're not qualified or whatever that is. I don't know. I know that I've had challenges going into, running my own business and being someone who would get up and speak in front of other people. But I'll tell you this, we're afraid of our wives. We're afraid of our families they're going to see behind the mask. That's what we're afraid of. They're going to see the truth about you. They're going to find out that you're not confident as you pretend to be, and that you struggle with depression or maybe even self-doubt. Like, I know you don't want to admit that, and maybe you might admit it amongst men, but the reality is that that's what you're fear of. And then the other thing is that, when we think about it, it's like, maybe the other thing that you're worried about is that you're not always the leader that we want to be. Maybe that's the case. Maybe the leader that you think you are, maybe that's not who you really are. Maybe that's not what you're really built for. That doesn't say you don't have it, but instead of letting someone in, we hide it. We cover it up. We distract ourselves with work. We go to the gym, with money, women, and anything that can keep us from being exposed. And I would tell you those things I just mentioned, work. Oh man, I had to work. I'm going to work 10 to 12 hours. Oh man, I got so much stuff going on. Excuse. I'm going to get to the gym. By the way, I get it. I love the gym too. But you get so consumed with it because you're hiding. Yeah, you making all the money, even when you start to talk about that, those are reasons for you. Oh man, like I got to work hard to make this money to take care of these things. Or you're flashing your money and that's where your confidence is coming from because you got bread. But the reality is like you're insecure inside. You're not as strong inside. And then if you're one of these men out here gallivanting through women, you think because you got all these women, again, that you're showing something and you're hiding, like it makes you look a certain way. Maybe you look like a confident guy because you can get all the women. Maybe you look like a guy who's got it all together because all these women want you. I'm just saying. I remember being a single guy. I get it, but one of the reasons why I'm even going in this far is because here's the truth. We hide our flaws. And hiding your flaws also hides the chance for you to heal. And that's why so many men are stuck. You want to get, you come to me and say, man, this is the year. Yeah, man, I'm going to do something crazy. 75 hard. I'm going to do, something, you're going to take some drastic change in your life when it comes to your health. And you say all that, but because you haven't changed those things internally, because you keep hiding and you're stuck, It doesn't go away. It doesn't change. You don't fully transform. You don't fully make the changes and redeem yourself completely because you're hiding all the things that you're struggling with. And I'm saying this to you, gentlemen, because at the end of the day, like, why I'm so serious about this is because, there's times I tell people, I say, man, if you can get your life together and you can get your mind right, the sky's the limit. Like, working out and losing weight, eating right are easy when you got your life together. When you got direction, clarity, and a path, you can just follow it. But if you're behind here feeling inadequate, and to be honest with you, fellas, like, you got it in you. It was already given to you. Like, the work in the gym, the discipline is about bringing that out. It's about you becoming that version that it's already in you, but just repeatedly, without the gaps, without the stumbles and the falls. And if you do have the stumbles and the falls, we just get back up and keep getting after it. There's nobody there to hug you, hold you, and tell you it's going to be okay. But the whole purpose of this, when we start talking about, this video that we talked about, and even what Jason was talking about, is this like, sometimes we don't realize that the power of the relationship and the marriage we have is the place God intended you to be, because some of the things that you've been working on, he never intended for you to work on them solo, and that he created a helper suitable for you, and you're bypassing the design God had for you in order for you to accomplish the things that you want. And for my single dudes that are out here talking about, you got to get your money together, you got to buy the house, you got to do all these other things. Cool, I get it. Go grind. And maybe you don't agree with me, but tell me why you're stuck. Tell me what story you're telling yourself over and over again that's keeping you in a place where you're not getting where you want to go. I tell you the peace and the power that's in the partnership of marriage, the blessing behind it. I'm going to say this. People will tell you marriage isn't easy. It's hard. Well, first of all, they're missing the blessing. Second of all, why do you expect it to be easy? What else in life is easy? What else in life doesn't give you challenges? And if you're building on something, it takes work. You can't build and just sit there. You build and you work. It takes intentful action. It takes purpose planning, consistency. If you've ever built anything, fellas, you built a car, built a wall, built a house, anything, a business, it takes time. It takes work. It takes intentionality. It takes focus. It takes determination. It takes partnership. You're not building those things on your own. Now, let me say this. Let's get back to the podcast, because what I want to say is that when I look around, I look at men today, I see a lot of guys that are strong in one area, but they're weak in another. And that concerns me and it confuses me, but I understand. Like, I'm starting to get it. I really get it. We got men who are successful financially, but they're spiritually bankrupt. They have all the money in the world, but spiritually, they're empty. We got men who are physically in shape, but emotionally broken. It could go back to your childhood. It could be anything. It could be a woman that was in your life. Whatever the case is, you're broken. You look great. Oh man, look at that guy, man. He's in great shape. Oh man, he take care of himself. But he's broken emotionally. Broken. We got men who are leaders in the office, but silent at home. And I get it sometimes, fellas, the silence. Maybe you're not feeling respected at home. And they say most men who don't feel respected revert to silence. I don't know if that's you. And that's why I knew this was more than just a fitness podcast. Because the reality, this isn't about reps and sets. It's about redemption. It's about becoming the man that God intended you to be. That's why I brought this podcast up, or this clip. Because it's bigger than that. Like, people ask me, what is redemption? What does it mean? It's this. Like, I'm so committed and I'm so convinced that us as men, we're not utilizing the tools and resources and the God-given design to allow us to be in a place where we can thrive, grow. Because everything, when you start worrying about like, when you start thinking about the things you want to do, buying your home, having this security, having in your career, thinking about the money you can make, the saving for later, all that kind of stuff. We start thinking about all that, but your life is so in disarray and you don't align yourself with what God has designed for you to do. It becomes so chaotic that you can't focus. And if you focus on one thing, you're only good at that one thing. But I'm like, man, if you're badass in this one thing and you're so good at this one thing, what's holding you back from the other? What is really going on? Fellas, tell me, like in the comments, tell me what's really happening. That's the part where I really want to get us to think about, because, when I start to think about this, we got to overcome stuff. So let's break this down into what men must overcome. So number one, we need to overcome fear of being exposed. Stop worrying about your flaws being seen. God already knows them. God already knows them. We know them. He knows them already. What are you worried about? Now, if you're with a woman and you can't have those conversations or feel like you can't be that transparent, I wonder if it's you or if it's really her. Have you tried? Have you even, and again, let me take that step back. Maybe you don't come from a place, maybe it's hard for you, right? But my question is, as a man, do you have faith in the fact that God is leading you and asking you, wanting you to be more transparent? Because I'll tell you this, your growth begins when you bring those flaws into light. And it's not about saying that you're weak. That's not it. It isn't. Because I think the honesty and transparency shows strength. It shows that you trust in God. And of course, we want to trust in our woman, but you got to trust it. You're hiding it. I'm going to give you a scripture here. It's James chapter 5, verse 16. It says, confess your sins to each other and pray for each other so that you may be healed. And again, healing doesn't happen in hiding. So I'm saying this to you. I'm giving you scripture because I really want you to understand that you can't keep hiding these flaws and then thinking you're going to see the evolution or your life change and evolve the way you want to. So second thing is imposter syndrome. Too many men feel like frauds, and it sucks. It sucks, man. It sucks. We compare ourselves to other men and we think, I'm not ready and I'm not good enough. Why? Again, you don't know what that other man has done, what he's gone through, what he's overcome, what he's had to redeem on his own, what challenges he's had. You don't. You're seeing something in a glimpse and you're imagining or you're assuming that they got it together and you don't have it. How do I say it? Like, you got it. Fellas, like, we can't sit here and continue to tell you. So here's what I want to say. The experiences, the scars, and even the failures have been through what you, the failures you've been through. Let me take that back. The experiences, the scars, and the failures you've been through are tools God wants to use. He's using those things. I used to tell myself, like, there's things in my life that happened that I was like, if these things would have gone this way, I would have been here. But what happened is these things that happened to me drove me to this place. I never imagined that I'd be doing a podcast about these things. I never did. I never knew that I would be, so driven and called to stand up and talk to men and help us overcome these challenges. And think about that in the fitness business, that is not just about getting bigger chest, legs, and all that. Because again, there's a bunch of dudes doing that and their lives are trash. The reality is that the men that I respect, the men that I see, they stand the hell up in their life in every way. They show up. When times are tough, they're reliable. You expect them there. They're also taking care of themselves, and you can see that I can rely on them because they take care of themselves. You see the kind of man that they're showing up in their business. They see the kind of man they're being in their relationships. That's it. So stop disqualifying yourself for what God has already qualified you for. I'm telling you again, This imposter syndrome, this entirety of what's keeping you stuck. Number one, let it go. And number two, allow the experiences, the scars and the flaws and the things that you're dealing with to actually give you strength. Without those experiences, doesn't burn deep. There's things that piss me off. There's things that drive me too, but they're things that God has given me and I use them. I use them. I have the deeper passion. People say, where do you get that from? Because he put it in me. It's in you too. It's in you too. So I'm going to say this. The last thing I'll say is the third thing is excuses about timing. You heard it before. There's never going to be a perfect time. There isn't. The perfect time is when you decide. I say that's redemption. I say even when you make that decision and you're like in your head, I'm done. I'm going. It's about to happen. Like when you do that, that's redemption because you're shifting your mindset. You're shifting it. Stop saying someday, and when you say someday, it's like the same thing as saying, I'll try. I'm trying. You're giving yourself an out. Start saying today. Like use action words. Use words that are actually going to motivate you to create action. So the reason why we have this, and I'm saying all this, is because we have to become the men that God has intended us to be. So let's talk about what men must become. Okay. And one of the things I'll say is that we have to become transparent leaders. I'm going to say this in all aspects of your life, at home and in your business, in who you lead. And if you're not in a leadership position, you are still a leader. You're still influencing people somehow. And being transparent doesn't mean you tell all your business. Being transparent means that even when you're working on things and you're growing to become someone or you're leading others, you're not perfect because you don't expect that from them. But transparency shows this is my true intention. These are the things I've learned from the challenges and the bumps in the roads that I've had. And here's some of the things I work on so that people feel encouraged to think, they look at you and maybe from the outside, you're a boss. But the reality is when you tell them the struggles you've had and how you're overcoming them or have overcome them, it makes you more relatable. It actually makes you human and people will listen to you. Leaders who fake confidence but show their scars still lead anyway. Excuse me. Leaders who don't fake confidence but show their scars still lead anyway. And again, you may think differently. You may even think to yourself like that's too emotional. That's too much for me. Find your median. Find out where it's at for you. But the faking stuff, the fact that you're hiding stuff, you wonder why you keep being held back. What we have to become also, we have to become builders, not consumers. Builders, building people, building family, building a lot of things, building business, building career, building a family, building a relationship, building a marriage. Men who create legacy, not just consume comfort. That's the other thing. We need to be men who create legacy and not consume comfort. Always work. Always find a way. Take the time. Sit down. Pour into your wife. Pour into your family. Pour into the people that you care about. Pour into them. Build. What are people going to say about you if you weren't here? If something happened, you went. What are you leaving behind? What do people say about the man that they see grow because you were open about the things that you had struggles with? Again, I'm not telling you to put all your business on Front Street, but I'm telling you, this is what we need to do. One of the other things, this is huge for me, is men who ask, what can I give before asking, what can I get? That's the kind of man we need to become. What can I give before what I can get? Be that kind of man. A man who's a man of faith and discipline. A man who lives by principle and not by feelings. a man who's grounded in God's word, not just there for willpower, not just their own willpower. And so I think what I'm getting at right now is becoming this transparent leader, becoming this man who doesn't fake his confidence, but shows his scars, right? Being a builder, a man who creates legacy, a man who asks, what can I give? Like, if you're wanting out of life all these things, it's called reciprocity. What are you willing to give for what you're asking the world for, what you're asking God for, what you're grinding so hard for? You're just a taker? Where do you serve? How do you show up as a man? And so here's some of the things I want to talk about in terms of how we live this out. So here's some tips, some practical tips. So number one, I want to say commit daily. So pick an area of your life that you've been avoiding and show up for it. Whether it's in the gym, if that's your marriage or relationship with God, pick one. I prefer the last one, your relationship with God. I think that's important. But either way, if you got that together, you're going to show up to the gym or you're going to show up in your marriage. Small, consistent steps build massive momentum. So you don't have to go and try to do the largest, biggest thing. I get it. You might feel motivated. You might even feel that this message was directly for you and you're like, this is good. Well, go do something that you know you can do and allow yourself to build some momentum. The smaller steps, right? You know, I had this analogy when I think about climbing Mount Everest, right? When you look up, or any big mountain, you look up and you're like, wow. You might even be able to see the top, but you're like, man, that's going to take forever, man. And you forget that all it matters is that the next step you take is the most important one. And the ability for you to walk and follow each step, every single step all the way up, it is a accumulation of all the steps that brought you there, not just one. It's not that big step. And I want you to remember that. One of the other things I want to say is find a brotherhood. So isolation is where men lose. Being in isolation, siloed, it's not good for us. That's why communities like this podcast exist. So don't go and be in this fight alone. Remember, they talk about iron sharpens iron. And we're going to have a conversation about that eventually on this podcast. Like, are you really iron? Like, we really need that. And one of the things I'm telling you is, as I'm building this podcast, like, I'm building a separate community so that we can come together. So it's not just me doing this podcast. And it's going to be about getting you guys in great shape, really focusing and driving to make sure we're elevating your mindset, but allowing you to have all the stuff you need, but also working on that part, like really driving about what men really need to do to redeem ourselves. So what I want to tell you too, so we say commit every day, find a brotherhood, and then shift the story. Stop saying someday I'll and start saying today I will. Remember, when you say these things, sometimes I try, you're giving yourself an out. You're not fully committed and you're going to continue seeing the same things. So that shift rewires your identity. It breaks the cycle of procrastination. And I know that's what we're dealing with in a lot of things. The next thing I'm going to tell you is serve first. I talked about this before. Instead of asking, what is in it for me? Start asking, who can I help today? Think about that. I know one of the biggest things I do when I get into lows or have a situation, it's like naturally in me, but I go help someone else. I realize when I take the attention off of me and I think about how I can help someone, and it could be as easy as helping somebody in the gym. It could be somebody that I work with. It doesn't matter. But I think about it, it'd be here in my family, right? But when I do that, that mindset helps me flip the script and it fuels purpose, right? Think about the fact that, like, you could be caught up in all this stuff, but when you can say, who can I help? Instead of thinking about what's in it for you, you have purpose. Like, we're asking men to make these changes, and it's like, you need purpose. So that's one of those things I think is really important. So I'm going to say this. I really think that this topic, really hit home for me. And it's important that we continue to think about like these different ways of consuming content. And one of the things I'll say is, I really want to challenge you here, right? I don't want you just to listen to this and then move on. And that's always been my intention. So I'm doing the best I can on terms of starting this podcast out. I want to keep it raw. Purposely not trying to edit anything. I really want you guys to get the video the way that it's created. And someday, as this thing goes on, really finding that sweet spot. So one thing I would say as we've gotten here, thank you so much for watching this video this long, and thank you for investing your time into listening to this podcast, because I realize, this does take time, and it is a perspective of mine, and I value that you're listening to it, and I appreciate that. But here's the thing. Let me challenge you. Take one thing you heard today and put it in action. Maybe it's having a conversation with your wife, which I would tell you right now, that would be probably one of the first things you should do. Maybe it's calling one of your brothers and saying, I need accountability. Do that. Like, again, the iron sharpens irons, keeping us accountable. I think that's a big part. And if you don't have those kind of relationships, like, that's another reason why I'm building this, because I realize that sometimes we have people around us, but those people aren't trying to achieve the things that you want, or you seem like you're so isolated that even going to them might be awkward. But I think that's one of the biggest things you do. Just call one of your brothers and say, I need accountability. Have you ever heard anyone ask you that? Say that. That's also being transparent. Maybe it's finally committing to showing up for yourself, right? Whatever that means, showing up for yourself. It's important, because this redemption podcast is not about staying stuck, especially staying stuck in excuses. It's about waking up, walking in the path of transformation. And I think that's the most important thing. I really do. So I'm going to say this. God didn't design you to just survive. He designed you to lead, to love, to serve, and to conquer. And that's bigger than muscle. That's legacy. So listen, guys, I want to say, I really hope that this podcast hit home. I really hope that when we looked at this video of Jason Wilson and maybe want to go back and listen to it again, I want to tell you, like, I heard it over and over again, and I told myself, you know what? This is the kind of thing that it was like a minute and a half of a clip, and it really brings to mind where we've struggled. And maybe you're right where he's at. Maybe you're in the midst. Maybe you're behind that time, but you still have these things missing. I would just want to just reconfirm and say, God never intended for us to do these things solo, and that there's power in the relationship and the marriage that he designed, that he placed you there, and that when you are trying to do these things on your own, anything, especially if you come to me and you want to get in better shape, stop trying to do these things by yourself. If you have a wife, you have a fiance, you have a relationship, start to build those things together. Be a builder, be the man God called you to be. And when you start to put these things together, I guarantee life is going to start moving in a way that's so much more favorable. You're going to see so much more peace and grace in terms of getting to the goals you have all over the place. I promise you that. So that being said, guys, thanks again for showing up to this next podcast. I'm excited. I got some other podcasts that are coming up that I'm gonna be interviewing some people, so that's going to be fun. But yeah, I would love leave your comments in the comments. It'd be great, and share this with some other brothers that you think would benefit from hearing this podcast. So anyway, I appreciate you guys. Again, until next time, be great. Continue to work. Stay grinding. Be the man that you're called to be. Don't hide your flaws. Stop being stop being in a silo. Stop hiding stuff, and go out there and allow the things that God put in you to allow you to get to the goals that you want. I appreciate you guys. Have a great day, and we will see you guys on the next one. Let's go.